Hello, welcome back to Buckle Up. My name is Rob Wilson and this is the Ssangyong / KGM Tivoli. And today I'm going to find out if this, one of the cheapest ways to get a crossover, is actually any good. Okay, so I'd like to start the video by talking about names. Now, you may have noticed at the start that I called this the Ssangyong / KGM, and that's because at this moment in time, as I'm making this video, Ssangyong is in the transition period of being bought by KG, which is a company that doesn't do cars, but anyway, it was going to be called KG Mobility. Might still be called Ssangyong. Ssangyong is a much cooler name because it means double dragon. Let's talk about the name of this car, because Tivoli isn't what you might expect this small Korean crossover to be called, because it's named after a small town just outside Rome in Italy. And I think that that has influenced the styling of the front of this car, because it does look quite European. These three little coloured bits here on the front of the higher bit of the bumper, they're coloured black, red, and then that red sort of matches the towing eye cover down here. This whole bit is sort of reminding me a little bit of a Baths from the 1960s, or if you really know your stuff, then maybe some first generation Twingo. I don't know. That's what it's sort of giving to me. You've got your headlights, daytime running lights across the top, and then you've got these three-tiered fog lights, they're LED as well. Overall, it's had quite a big facelift. This isn't an entirely new car, just a major facelift, and I think this now looks really rather good. So let's go and look at the side, because we've got some lovely 18-inch alloy wheels on this top spec Ultimate Nav edition. I will now just briefly run you through the range. There are three different specs that you can pick from. They are Ventura, which is the base car, and that starts just over £20,000, although I've definitely seen them for under £20,000 brand new from dealers. Then there's the Ultimate version, and then the Ultimate Nav, and then that's sort of creeping into the £25,000 price range. So still really quite cheap for this segment of car, and especially the size, because I don't know if this comes across on camera, this almost looks like the size class above of what it actually is. So hopefully that'll translate to a lot of space inside. On the front door, we've got the badge denoting the power plant, which I'll talk more about when we drive it. And then moving down the side, we've got some chunky black roof rails and generally quite a impressive, imposing, tall looking SUV styling with your black going around the arches. You've got a nice crease here on the rear door. But let's move on to the back, because at the back we've had a fairly big facelift as well. Rear lights are still very similar to the old car, but now we get Tivoli written across the back in this sort of gunmetal grey, which is following on from what's been done to the Rexton, the much bigger Ssangyong that you can buy. We have Ultimate here denoting the spec level of this car, and you will notice that this guy's also fitted with a towing hook, and you can tow 1 ton braked or 500 kilograms unbraked with this car, so that's quite good to know. But let's open up the boot, because you'll see it's actually very large, 427 litres, which makes it one of the biggest in class. I think the only one that's bigger than this is the ZS, but that is a bigger car. You can fold the seats down nice and easily as well, just the flick of a button from back in here. Same on that side. Unfortunately, you don't get a flat floor with that, but you can option a false floor if you need that flat floor for pushing items all the way towards the front seats. Now, one thing I will mention is there is quite a big lip here for lifting items up into the back of the car and out again. I wouldn't personally be bothered by that, but it's worth mentioning. So I'll put those back seats up and then I'll go and sit in them and see if I fit. Okay then, so in the back seats, and first things first, let's talk about space, because I'm 6'2" or 188 centimeters tall, and as you can see, this seat is set up in my driver's position, and I can't quite put my knees behind the seat, but I can put them either side and they're not bashing into the door. So again, I'm quite tall. I find this in most of this car's rivals as well. I think the ZS has potentially a little bit more space, but not too much. Headroom, loads. Even for me, my head does touch if I sit all the way up straight, but you never actually do that. You slouch a little bit. If I was sitting 3 up in the back here, I wouldn't want to be the middle passenger if I had taller outer passengers, because your knees are eating into that central space. In terms of materials and build quality and everything like that, we've got hard plastics on the top of the doors, but then you do have some softer materials on here and where you rest your arm, so you're not going to have a bruised elbow. In the centre here, we do have a central armrest which folds down, and it's got 2 cup holders in there, and my bottle of water that fits in the door pocket also just about fits in the armrest, so that's quite handy. Armrest usually gets overlooked. Volkswagen Group don't do them, so this is nice to see, and this is much cheaper than those cars. It's also leather seats in this top model, and of course you do have Isofix for fitting a child seat. There's no aircon vents or controls here in the back, so what we'll do is move up front, because there I can show you a lot more of what's going on. Okay, so up here in the front, there's quite a lot to talk about. So let's start off with what's right in front of me. This, as I say, is the top spec car, so we've got a nice leather steering wheel with my volume controls, seek, answering the telephone, all that stuff on this side, and then on the right hand side I have my cruise control functions. Now that is only normal standard cruise control. This isn't adaptive, and you can't option it with an adaptive system either. Then through the steering wheel I have on, again, the top spec, well, the top 2 specs, you have a 10.25 inch screen which can either display your dials. You can have traditional looking dials with a rev counter and a speedo, or you can have a more futuristic design which I think looks like Spider-Man's chest, which just has the speed in the middle and no other real distractions. One thing I do like, in the normal mode you can actually, on this top spec, have the sat-nav appear in that screen as well, so you don't have to have it running through the screen on the centre. Speaking of the screen, on this top spec car it is a 9.2 inch screen. On the 2 lower specs it's an 8 inch screen setup, but it's nice and easy to use. You've got physical knob here for twisting the volume up and down. You do have shortcut buttons on the side, and you can connect your Apple CarPlay and Android Auto up to it via the USB in the center here. Then below that, this haptic screen is where all of your climate controls are, so you can tap it if you want the temperature to go up and down. It's actually quite responsive, and it's way better than having all of that stuff buried in a screen, because at least here you can aim your finger a lot better than you can while you're driving along trying to access a menu, which you would have to do in certain other brands. Below that you've got heated seats, 3 stages in the front, and that is standard on all Tivolis, as is the heated steering wheel, which is on this control panel next to the steering wheel on the right hand side. So nice premium big car luxury features just standard, even on the 20 grand model. In terms of practicality, we've got here a storage bin in the center, which is a fairly decent usable shape. The door pockets are massive. Big bottle of water fits in there fine, and you've also got 2 cup holders in the middle into which you can put bottles of water or iced coffee in this scenario. You've got a glove box as well, which is a really big, decent size with your manual. There's plenty of space in there. And then you've got a little cubby down here in the center, which has got a 12 volt power output there. And that's sort of where you would put your phone when you've connected up your Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, if you've got it. But yeah, material quality in here, still hards, mixture of plastics and different things. There's some soft touch on the top of the dashboard, but really, this is more of a utilitarian vehicle. I feel it's not luxurious by any stretch of the imagination, but everything feels really well screwed together, really well built. There's no squeaks or rattles. And obviously, this is a Ssangyong. You've got a 5-year, 100,000 mile warranty if anything did go wrong. So that's a nice bit of peace of mind. So with all that being said, let's go out on the road and see what it's like to drive. Okay, so now we're out driving the Tivoli, and the first thing that I think would be worth talking about is the different safety features that you get on this model, because it's got nearly all of them except blind spot monitoring, which I think is actually one of the most important. So it's a bit weird that they've skipped on that, but you get all of the usual lane keep assist and speed sign recognition systems, all of that stuff, just not the blind spot monitoring, which I have to say is a little bit disappointing. First plus point though of those safety systems is because lane keep assist is the most irritating thing in the world. It's nice that you can just switch it off at the push of a button there on those buttons to the right of the steering wheel. You don't have to go into a menu and a sub-menu and then another sub-menu like you do in some manufacturers' cars. Second thing, the indicator noise. It's weird and a little bit annoying. But that's the negatives basically dealt with, because the engine, it's a 1.5 turbocharged 4-cylinder. That's the only engine you can get. Doesn't matter what spec you go for, it's just one engine. All you can pick is manual or automatic. The base Ventura model only comes with a manual. The Ultimate and Ultimate Nav, you can select this 6-speed auto that I have in this test car. So that 1.5 litre engine has 163 PS, and in the manual versions it has 280 newton meters of torque. In the automatic that's slightly less, 260 newton meters. I suspect that's something to do with the amount of torque that this automatic gearbox can handle. But there is no quoted figures for the 0 to 60 time, so I'm going to make it up. It's 8-9 seconds. It's definitely quicker than its rivals, the Dacia Duster and MG ZS. The base MG ZS has a 1.5 litre engine like this, but that one isn't turbocharged and it's really old. So it's only got like 107 horsepower. So this is much more powerful. It's got twice as many newton meters of torque in the Tivoli compared to the ZS. So if you want a car in this price bracket, a crossover in this price bracket, then this is the most powerful and the fastest, unquestionably. So that's something to bear in mind. In terms of road manners, I think this is very comfortable indeed. I have done a nice long trip over to the Lake District in this one this week, and it was absolutely perfect. You've got cruise control, as I mentioned. You've got a nice smooth automatic gearbox, and the road manners are absolutely adequate. It's not sporty. It's not supposed to be sporty, so I'm not going to mark it down for that. The steering has as much or as little feel as every other car in its class, so again, can't mark it down for that. You've got a nice clear view ahead of you. You sit quite high up, a lot higher up than you do in, for example, the Kia Stonic. So if you like that high visibility driving position, that you feel like you're lording it over other motorists, then this is probably the one to go for. You've got a clear view out the back. You do have a reversing camera as standard, and it's a nice clear image. And as I mentioned, this one has the optional tow hook fitted, which, when that rear camera is on, is pointing directly at that, so you can have a nice clear view if you're hitching up a trailer. Little things like that, you see, that is a big plus point. One thing that took me a little bit of time to get used to was the throttle response, because it's simultaneously delayed but also a bit sharp. It's quite difficult to explain, but if you absolutely mat the throttle, the gearbox is a little bit dim-witted, so it takes a bit of time to respond, but because of the delay, you find yourself pushing more onto the throttle, and then when it does actually start going, it's like, whoop, it's a bit jolty, so that's something to get used to. Wouldn't put me off buying the car, and I suspect the manual wouldn't do that. Obviously, I'm testing the automatic today, so most of the time this gearbox is perfectly smooth. It's just maybe a little bit slow. You can actually change the drive mode with a button down here, so you've got normal, sport or winter. So I've put it into sport, and it doesn't really seem to make that much difference at all in terms of the throttle feel or its eagerness to go quickly. It's definitely quicker than rivals, but I'm not really sure that it's necessary, so I just keep it in normal most of the time. Economy, that's probably important to buyers of this car. So the manual versions of this engine are rated at around the 40 mile to gallon mark on the WLTP cycle, and if you go for the automatic, that drops a few to 37. If you're doing long distance drives, as I did when I went to the Lake District, it actually did better than 40 miles to the gallon, about 45. So it's going to be as economical as its closest rivals, the ZS and the Duster, both of which we've already tested. The other thing to mention, I guess, would be, I've mentioned the price obviously, but most people these days buy cars on finance, and if you want to do that, there's lots of finance deals out there. I'm not going to tell you which ones to go for, obviously, but I've seen a few that have a 289 deposit and then 289 a month. So pretty good value for money in terms of the amount of car that you're getting for that price, that monthly payment. And while this is slightly more expensive compared to cars like the ZS and the Duster, you are getting that more powerful engine. If you want as powerful an engine in those cars, it's going to bring it up to the same price as this. So that's to bear in mind. If you're just looking at the figures on a piece of paper, you won't necessarily see that. In terms of refinement, they've done a lot to this new Tivoli to make it quieter and less harsh, and make sure less noises are getting into the cabin, and I think they've been pretty successful in that. Rides nicely, compliant. There doesn't seem to be an awful lot of tyre noise. It's not really echoey in here. The only thing I would mention is occasionally you can hear wind noise coming from around the mirror, but frankly I don't think it's any more or less civilized than its closest rivals. All in all though, very impressed by the driving experience given the kind of car it is and its price point, so I think it's quite a good value for money. But with that being said, let's head back and I will do a proper full conclusion for you. Okay, so that is the Tivoli tested. So, conclusion time. If you want the absolute cheapest crossover, buy the Dacia Duster. If you want the biggest crossover that you can buy in this price bracket, that's also got a 7-year warranty, get the MG ZS. If you want an all-rounder with a 5-year warranty, it's got plenty of space inside and it's actually got some quite cool chic styling. It's an excellent little car. I'm very surprised that I've enjoyed my time with it so much. But there you go. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, comment down below and let me know your thoughts on the Tivoli, and most importantly, please do subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're notified every time we make an upload. If you want to support us, you can follow lots of different links down in the description for all our social medias. If you want to become a channel member, there's lots of behind the scenes exclusive videos, or you can buy some merch as well if you feel particularly passionate about Buckle Up. So thank you again for watching and I will see you next time. Bye!